Ugh, are we there yet?
Hello and welcome to I Am Not Your Tour Guide, but I am your host, Starla Skelton. And this is a podcast for travelers who want to come on and share their stories. And I believe that their stories are incredibly important to be heard because you never know when you're going to learn something through someone else's perspective. So tonight, coming to us all the way from Taipei, Taiwan, we have Adam Massingale. I said tonight, but it's in the morning for you, right? What time is it there?
Yeah, it's 11 a.m. here.
Okay, and it's 10 p.m. here. Okay, yeah. Well, good morning, Adam Massingale.
Yeah, good morning. I always tell my family, like, we live in the future here, right? Because we're actually ahead of you guys, so.
Yeah. So I just have to throw this out there. You're married. You are married. I mean, I've known you since you were, 14, 15? And you are out in Taipei, Taiwan, living there. You're married. Oh, my God. I'm just so excited for you. How's married life?
It's good. Yeah, it was, I got lucky in the fact that, like, I met a great person. And so, getting married hasn't really, added or subtracted. There's no pressure involved in it. And so we're officially married in Taiwan. We were going to get married when we were back in the States over the holidays, but turns out there's a lot of weird red tape about she was in America on a tourist visa. And so, like, if you get married on a tourist visa, it can create lots of problems down the road in the future if she wants to get like a green card or something. So we have to actually, the official process is come back to Taiwan, apply to get married, and then they will, when we come back next time, they'll give her a K visa, and then we can go get married when we're in the States.
Oh man, that's a lot harder process. You know what? I actually think they should make that process for everybody that lives here, just to make it a little bit harder so that we think a little bit more about it before we get married.
That is true. Yeah, that is true.
So it's been a minute. It's been a minute since we've hung out, since we've talked. I think the last time I actually sat down and got to talk to you, Coral and I met you for dinner. Weren't you like gutting out a van or a bus or something so that you could go road tripping across America?
So when I moved to Taiwan in 2014, I believe, and so I taught here for 5 years. So after 5 years, you can get a permanent residency. And so once I got my permanent residency, I was like, well, this is a good time to take a break. And I went back home, spent some time with family. And one of the things that I wanted to do was travel around the States a little bit, because most of my travel experiences were always abroad because it was cheaper. So, like, always Central America and Southeast Asia, places like that where it was much more affordable. So, I had a little bit more money at the time. I was like, well, let's go travel around the States a little bit. And by this point, I have like friends that's kind of scattered about. So, yeah, so I bought an old box truck, like a moving truck, and kind of like re-outfitted it, converted it into a camper van, and, drove it, basically made a lap around the United States in it, and stopped and saw a bunch of people and had a real good time. That's
awesome. Would you, whenever you were done with the van, did you sell it, or you still got it at home at mom's house?
No, I sold it. It was pretty big, so I was a little bit worried. My dad was going to be moving in the next year or two, and so I didn't really want to leave that there for him to deal with it. And then, out at my mom's house on the farm, again, it would have just been sitting in the way. And there's, it's like a house, right? If nobody's using that kind of stuff, it will begin to deteriorate. So, I ultimately just, decided I'll sell it, and then it worked out really great. Actually, I actually sold it to a guy in Florida who was like a traveling, somehow or another, was like a traveling fireman or something. So he needed like a mobile station to live in. And, so he bought it, and I ended up getting all my money back out of the van, the truck, and actually paid for my trip around. So it actually worked out really well.
That's pretty incredible. I love that. So you moved to Taipei, Taiwan in 2014. And so what's your life kind of looked like in Taipei since then?
Taipei is it's a very modern city. So, it's not like, if you're used to traveling, into like third world destinations where everything is chaos all the time, Taipei is not so bad. So life didn't look a whole lot different in terms of like scheduling or what I did. But yeah, like I said, for 5 years, I worked at a school that was kind of out up on a mountain. So basically get up and I drive at that time I was driving a scooter. I didn't have a car license here yet. So I would just hop on my scooter, drive myself to work.
So you didn't have to have a license for the scooter,
Yeah,
just for
you're
a
supposed
car?
to have a license for the scooter, but but in general, the police here, they don't particularly mess with scooters a whole lot unless you're doing something really stupid or crazy. You know, they're not really messing with you a whole lot. So, funny fact, I still don't have a scooter license. Actually, it's almost 8 years here now. I still haven't gone and got that license yet. I did get my car license
You're
finally,
such a
so I can
rebel.
drive a car legally here now. But yeah, I mean, that was life for a lot of that. Where it was basically, work during the week. My job was Monday to Friday, like 8 to 4, and then on the weekends it was go out, either out to the mountains or the river or the beach and kind of relax. So life looked very similar as it did back in the States. It was a whole lot less stress. Money goes a whole lot further. So, for once, I'm actually able to save money and put money aside and invest some money and do things like that. I had a little bit more teaching here, and teaching in the States is very similar in the fact that you get a lot of time off. So, teaching here, I got 8 weeks of paid vacation every year. So that left a lot of free time, a lot of opportunities to travel and stuff like that. So it was really good. Yeah, everything here has been really good. I would say, in so far in my experience living abroad, the only thing that I would say has been a negative is far away from my family. It's really difficult to get back and see those people. And then, in Taipei, it's pretty population density is pretty high. So I really miss the space of America, just being able to go out and just look out into the distance and see some space. You hear, it's just everybody's on top of each other. But
Right. So regarding the Taiwanese way of life, what are some beautiful things about this country that you have learned to appreciate?
well, I mean, the first thing that you'll notice the moment that you arrive in Taiwan is just how friendly and helpful everybody is here. It's a wonderful place in that regard, and I think that comes from a few areas. Part of it is in their culture. They have this really big eyed concepts around honor and respect. And I think those things transition to a lot of different areas of society. But yeah, it's so, people are so kind and helpful. I always joke here, like you could drop your wallet on the road and come back 3 hours later and it would still be there. Like nobody would mess with it. Nobody would steal the stuff out of it. If you're lost or you can't figure something out, like somebody, not only will they tell you how to get there, but most likely they will take you there. They'll like either walk with you there or put you in their car and drive you there. So
Man, back whenever I visited you and Ryan and Katie and Matt, whenever y'all lived there, I just remember being shocked when we were walking down the streets and I realized none of these bikes are locked up. Like there were, they weren't like locked up everywhere. I was like, they're just freestanding. Like anybody could take anybody's bike, but they don't.
yeah, that's why in the U.S., in most cities in the U.S., the bike wouldn't last 5 minutes. Like you like walk in the gas station to grab something, you come back and it's gone. So
Even with a lock on a bike around here,
yeah, so you don't have to
it's
worry
gonna
about that
be
stuff
gone.
here. That's one of the really nice things about being here in Taiwan is that I think it's regularly they do those like the polls, and I think Taiwan is either the first, it's always in the top three for the most safe, friendly places in the world.
Wow, that's awesome. So what's the relationship with China right now? Because I haven't read up on it lately. What does that look like?
It's pretty tense right now. But I mean, if you talk to most Taiwanese people, they'll tell you like, look, this has been what's been going on for the last, 30 years, so. If you look at the American news media, it's very doom and gloom. It's like impending invasion from China any second now. But that's really been the case for the last decade or more. and that's, there's a real long entwined history there, but for the reasons behind that. But modern day, you essentially kind of have like a two-party system here, whereas like the KMT, which is like the original government that came to Taiwan, are they're pro-China. Not that they want to be China. They're not saying like, hey, China, come take us over. They basically want to maintain like the status quo, the whole cross-strait relations, like the kind of like Hong Kong used to be, right? Kind of like one country, two governments kind of deal.
Right.
Whereas the more progressive party here, the DDP, they are more like seeking for, like, they want independence. Like they don't want to be attached to China at all. For the most part, they want to be recognized as a country. And so for the last presidential term that the DDP party has been in power, so they've been doing a lot of independent talk and stuff like that. So that always gets China fired up, and they have to fight back against that rhetoric to their own people. So there's all this talk of like invasion and taking Taiwan, and we'll show them. And at the end of the day, it's most Taiwanese people here just, you go about your life as normal, and just kind of know that that's just China posturing. But we'll see. Time will tell.
Right. I remember years ago, whenever, one of the many times that I got my heart broke, and me, and when I get my heart broke, I'm like, I'm going on a trip, and I'm going to I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going somewhere. And so I ended up, I don't know if you remember this, but I ended up in Tibet. And it was quite the adventure to get there. But once I got there, I remember saying something about Taiwan to somebody, and I literally got shushed by one of the people that lived there. And, he spoke English great. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not really, like, I understand there's tension, but am I really supposed to shush? And he was like, just don't talk about the 3 T's. Okay. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. And I was like, the 3 T's. And he was like, don't talk about Tibet. Okay. I'm in Tibet, but whatever. Don't talk about Tibet. Don't talk about Tiananmen Square, and don't talk about Taiwan. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, and that's your way just to stay under the radar while you're here. So I'm just assuming that China still feels a bit tense about Taiwan.
Yeah, definitely. And, and it's always hard to tell what their motives are, because a lot of it, they do a lot of these like videos that you see on the news and stuff. And then if you actually go and break them down and listen to people analyze them, they'll show you, these are videos from 10 years ago when there was one recently where they were like basically gathering a whole bunch of like armored vehicles and stuff near the coast. So they're going to invade Taiwan now. Well, that was actually like 8 years ago or something. There's always a back and forth, and a lot of it is because the Chinese government controls all the news media and all the information. So a lot of the stuff that gets produced is, propaganda for its own people. And so then the rest of the world has to then try to interpret, well, is there any intention behind that? Or is it just trying to make themselves look strong and powerful to their own people? And, 2 years ago, I'd have told you, yeah, I'm not even worried about it at all. With all the stuff in Ukraine and the other kind of craziness going on around the globe right now, like it's definitely something that I'm concerned with, but it's not something that like I sit around in fear of every day.
Right. So earlier, whenever we were talking about what your life's looked like the last 10 years, and you said you go on some adventures on the weekends. What has changed as far as your professional life? Because last time I was there, you were a teacher. Were you teaching history? I don't remember exactly what you were teaching.
Yeah, since I've been in Taiwan, I've taught a little bit of everything. So like the first 5 years I was here, I taught English, like language arts, to elementary school kids. Mm-hmm. But all of my, for me, all of my teacher stuff has been like all my training was for older kids. So after I took that break and went home and traveled around for a while, when I came back, I actually went to the high school and taught middle school and high school, and I taught social studies up there, which I enjoyed much more.
Right. I remember because that's whenever you were in college, you were studying more with a focus on history, right?
Yeah, my bachelor's degree is in history. And so then I graduated and was just going to go teach because that's in Georgia. That's all you needed to do was just have a degree in a subject and pass the test. And that was the 2000, I think 12 or something like that, 2011, 2012. And that was when we had another kind of the economy kind of fell out and we had a lot of teachers out of work. And so the competition for teaching jobs was just way too high. And so there, basically it wasn't going to happen. So I actually then went back and got a master's degree in education. And then so that's kind of how I moved into, getting over abroad and stuff like that was with my master's degree.
I'm not saying come back here because, you do you. But if you ever did come back here, you could get a job at any school, in any state, in any city. I mean, we are in need. Just letting you know, putting that in your head.
Sadly, that seems to be true for most industries. When I was back, the last time I came back, everywhere I went, everybody was hiring. It's like there's just nobody wants to work right now. I guess I'm not exactly sure what's going on. I haven't been there, but I don't know. If I came back to the States, I don't think I'd want to teach. That's one of the beautiful things about Taiwan is that the money that I earn here as a teacher, it's less than I would earn in the States, but it goes so much further. So I actually live fairly comfortable on my teaching salary here, whereas back in the States, it's a little bit tighter. I don't know if it's worth all the stuff you have to go through.
Well, I taught for a few years. I have so much respect for teachers. That's all I can say. I have so much respect for teachers and they're amazing. And I wish they got paid more. But in Taiwan, so you started out as a teacher and you have transitioned, you have grown the full beard, you have this really badass backdrop behind you, and it's really throwing me like outdoor vibes. So what's been your newest adventure that you've been doing in your professional life?
Yeah, so that was one of the things when I took my year off, that was a point in which I realized like, all right, like teaching is not something I want to do forever. Like I'm okay with it, but it's not like there wasn't any like self-fulfillment in that job for me. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what would you like to do with the rest of your life? What things make you happy? What are you interested in? And so, since I've lived, Taiwan's like 70% mountains. And so since I've lived here, I've really got into, hiking and, climbing and stuff in the mountains. And so, I was like, well, I knew I wanted to work for myself. That was kind of one of the things. Look, I don't want to spend my life working for somebody else. And so, then I was like all these various options of paths I could go down. And so I was like, well, which path is most exciting to you? And for me, that was outdoors. And so I was like, well, let's start there. And if that one doesn't work, we'll go back and we'll try another one. And so in 2021, when I came back to Taiwan, I basically kept teaching, but I started putting into work, doing the research and, contacting different manufacturers and stuff like that. And basically set up a hiking apparel and equipment company here in Taiwan.
That's so cool.
Yeah, which was, it was really awesome and extremely difficult because, obviously, my Chinese is, not that great, especially not in terms of like legal documents and, so there was a whole bunch of stuff. And being a foreigner in Taiwan, there's a lot of like hoops to jump through, in terms of setting up a business and getting bank accounts set up. And, it's just the banking system in Taiwan is very antiquated. So it's, it's very difficult here. Everything's done on paper, and it's branch by branch. So it was really complicated and really difficult. Took me a little over a year to actually get everything like legal and set up. But now it is, and now everything is running. And so as of July 2022, then I stopped teaching and I've been doing this company full time.
Man, that's amazing. Is it just you, or do you have some people working with you, or your wife, or or solo right now?
Right now, it's just me with the frequent help from my wife, because basically, a lot of the stuff that I translate or that I put into Chinese, is not always like done exactly the way it needs to be. Or, when you're running a business, you got to communicate information in a way that like people will read, right? So it's got to culturally fit, it's got to be correct, and all that stuff. So she will usually help me fix all that stuff. And then using a variety of other services for, like, I have an accounting service here that helps me keep everything legal and stuff like that, so I don't get in any trouble. But everything else is me, right? Right now, the product development, the research, the marketing, the sales, the website, the IT, it's all me right now. So I stay busy.
Who are you selling to?
Right now it's mostly just in Taiwan. So I'm trying to just get everything like situated here. And I hope to this year, I have like probably 7 or 8 products I'm trying to launch this year. So I hope by the end of this year, once I have like a stable product line, then I want to try to look at maybe expanding out either back into the States or possibly, Japan or other South, Asian countries.
So whenever you develop these products, or as you develop it, are you going out on the weekends or whenever your wife's working, and are you testing them out yourself? Like, how do you come to a decision that, like, hey, yeah, this is where it's at, this is going to be helpful, this is what's going to sell? How do you come to that? How do you decipher that decision?
Yeah, just like that. Like basically, the first product that I did here was merino wool underwear, and that was because there wasn't a lot of options available. You could only basically get Icebreaker here, and after importing and all the other kind of stuff, I mean, Icebreaker is already incredibly expensive. And so by the time you pay all the import taxes and all the other kind of stuff, they're like $60 US a pair here. It's outrageously expensive, And so I had 1 or 2 pair of them, and they were like gold, like they only got worn for hiking. That was it. They were very well taken care of. And so I was like, well, that's something I wanted. And so that was the first product. But that's basically how it goes is, I talk to people here and see like what kind of things people are liking. And then where are the gaps here? What things are really popular, say like in Japan or in the US or Europe that aren't readily available here. And then I look at seeing how we can manufacture and make those. And then once I land on something, I'll have a few of them made, and then me and a couple of friends here, we'll go out and we'll just wear them and test them. And for me, when it comes to clothes, like I'm really all like into comfort. Like when you're hiking and you're sweaty and you're hot and you're tired, like the last thing that you want is to have a piece of clothing or something that's irritating you or bothering you. So for me, like the perfect clothing does its job and you don't know you're wearing it. And so that's
right.
Kind of what I go for.
Do you have, thus far that you have created, do you have a favorite product that you have created?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the merino underwear because those are a game changer. Like if you've got bigger legs, and you hike in the heat, real quick that nothing will ruin your day faster than some thigh chafing. And merino wool is just, there's nothing better to deal with those kind of issues than that. So, I mean, obviously I have like thousands of pairs of them now because I had them made. So I literally threw all my other underwear away. That's all that I wear.
Is it for men and women or just men?
Men and women. Yeah, have men and women.
Okay. Making sure.
Yep. The women's products are like, they're slower for me to develop because like the men's products I can put them on myself, and also I've got all my guys I hike with are all men for the most part. So for the female products, I have to get my wife or some other people to test. So I hope this year as finances continue to grow and stabilize, they can actually get some more people involved that can help me, do the women's clothing a little bit faster.
Well, that's exciting. I'm super proud of you. That's something that, now that I think about it, you should have done a long time ago.
Yeah.
Like just because you are creative, and very intelligent, but you and my brother and all y'all just, you've lived outdoors. So what you want to wear, what feels good. So I think this is definitely a perfect path for you. Not that what I say matters. I'm just saying, as your friend, I am proud of you. That's super exciting.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
So since you are in a place right now in your life where you can kind of prop up your feet a little bit and reflect on your younger days of travel, what crazy travel story, let me be specific, kind of sticks out in your mind from your younger days?
Okay. There's a bunch of them. Like when we traveled, especially in the younger days of traveling, there was no real planning. It was just, where do you want to go? We want to go here. And okay, all right, well then let's go there. Can we afford the plane ticket? And if you can afford the plane ticket, then like, all right, well then we can definitely live there. I need like $3 a day. I don't need much. So it's as long as we could get there. And so one of my favorite ones that comes to mind is actually it was me and Buddy and Devin, and man, there was a fourth person, and now I'm blanking on who the fourth person was, but
Dan.
No, it wasn't Dan on this one. That was when we went to Cuba. This one, it might have been Evan. I think it might have been Devin and Evan. But anyways, we went to no, maybe it was Dan. No, I don't know. We made 2 trips to Mexico, and now my memory isn't good enough to remember who one was. But anyways, we went to Mexico, and we had a great time in Mexico. And the plan kind of evolved to that we were going to go from Mexico to Honduras to see your family. And so we, in the States, we looked, and the flight from Mexico to Honduras was like, I think it was around $80 or $90 or something like that is what we saw on the internet.
Uh-huh.
And so when we finished up our trip in Mexico, of course, we didn't think to buy that ticket in America when we planned this, because we never knew what day we were going to go. So, we were like, at some point we're going to go to Honduras. So we'll buy a ticket. So when we got to Mexico and we went to the airport to buy the ticket, and the ticket was like $400 or something, something super expensive. We were like, hold on a minute. Like we were like, this is supposed to be like $90 or something. And like, I guess because we waited so late or something, I don't really know. And so I only had like $170 left. That's like all the money that I had. Like, so buying a plane ticket like wasn't an option. I think the only person that had the money to buy the plane ticket was Devin. And Devin was like,
of course.
And so we were like, look, Devin, if you want to buy the plane ticket, like, go ahead. But like, it's not even an option for me unless you're going to buy it for me. And he was like, I'm not buying it for you. So then we're like, all right, well, how can we get to Honduras then? Because our flights home were from Honduras. So like, we couldn't just say, well, we're not going to Honduras now because we already bought plane tickets home from Honduras. So what we ended up doing was we found out that you could go by bus. And so we took a bus from essentially like Cancun, I think, all the way basically to Honduras. And that was an experience. So, and when I say bus, like, I don't mean like like a big Greyhound bus or something.
A Greyhound?
This is a school bus. Like, we were literally on a big yellow school bus. And I remember like we got on in Mexico, and it was like, okay, like the trip through Mexico like was okay. And then we hit Belize. And when we got into Belize is when things started to get real shaky, because I remember we were on the bus, and I remember like we were all on our own individual seat. There wasn't very many people on the bus. And of course, like it was 1,000 degrees. So I remember like passing out and like falling asleep, like kind of laying in the bus seat. And when I woke up, like literally imagine a school bus seat side by side, like me and Buddy were sitting beside each other in 2 different seats. When I woke up, I couldn't even see him. There were so many people on that bus. And me and him were just laid blocking a whole seat, because we'd been asleep. Nobody woke us up. I mean, and there were 200 people on that school bus. And we ended up going, we were on like dirt roads. And I remember at one point the bus got stuck. and we had to get out of the bus and like help push the bus out of like some mud holes and stuff. And then there was, I remember we went through like a huge Mennonite area, and so there was like a bunch of Mennonites that were like on the bus with us. Just a really wild bus ride, and that was getting into Belize. And then at one point I remember like I ran out of cash. I didn't have any more like cash on me or something. And so, basically a guy will kind of come around the bus, and like, we're on the bus for the total bus ride was, I think, 42 hours or something that we were on this bus. And so most people get on this bus for 30 minutes and then hop on and hopping off as they're going around. But like, so the guy like kept coming and like trying to collect money from us and stuff, and I kept telling him like, look, like I don't have any cash. I don't have any cash on me. So eventually like he like wouldn't accept it. And like the bus driver, which we got off and on a couple of times. And then this one bus driver was like, look, like you need to pay. And I was like, well, like I need an ATM. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, we got to some random village. And I think we might've still been in Belize. I don't know where we were at this point, to be honest, but they're basically like, there's an ATM. It's on the other side of town. You've got 30 minutes. Basically the bus is stopping for 30 minutes. And if you don't come back, I'm leaving you.
Right.
So like I sprinted to the other side of town, it's a bank essentially, show up to the bank on the other side of town. And there's only one bank. So there's like a line of 30 people. And I'm like,
there's always a line of 30 people at those Latin and South American banks.
So I'm like looking at my watch. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what am I going to like? I'm like, 10 minutes had gone by of my 30 minutes, and like I haven't moved. A single person hasn't finished yet. So there was like some security guards in there. And so like I went and got one of the security guards, and my Spanish was decent at the time. So like I was able to like explain to the guy, like, listen, I'm on a bus. It's going to leave me in 20 minutes. Like, can you help me? If I need to get some cash, can you help me? And they were like, I don't remember. There was no, either wasn't an ATM or I couldn't use an ATM. I don't know why I couldn't use the ATM, but basically he like went and talked to some tellers. They ended up getting me the money. And I remember I had like 5 minutes, and I remember I was like running full speed through this village, freaking everybody out. Some like foreign dudes just sprinting through the village, And like literally as I'm coming back, the bus is like pulling out, and I can see like Buddy and Devin in the bus, like yelling at the bus driver to stop. I'm like running. I'm minutes from being left by myself in this like village, So that was pretty wild. That was a pretty wild part of the trip. We ended up having to get off of that bus in a bus no, that was a different time. Well, we got to the border. When we got to the edge of the Belize border, I think it was, and the border was just closed. There was like a sign that said like the border's closed. And at that point we had gotten, the bus had dropped us off at like 20 minutes away from the border, and we had to like take a taxi to the border. And so when we got there, the taxi driver was like, yeah, the border's closed. And we're like, well, that's not a thing, right? Like, you don't just close the border. I need to go across, and he was like, well, there's like the border guards. They have like a house station. Like, he's like, I'll drive you up there, and like, you can go try and like talk to these guys. So we literally walk up to this guard post and like knock on the door. And I'm not even joking. Like, the dude answers the door with like a, AK-47. And he's like peeking out, like, look, who is here? What are you doing? And like, I can see in, and there's like a bunch of the guards are sitting around playing cards and drinking. And the guy was like, yeah, like the border's closed until like tomorrow at some point in time. And we're like, listen, like we like been on a bus for 2 days. Like, we need to get across. People are waiting on us. And the guy was like, hold on a minute, and closed the door. Went a couple minutes later, came back to the door, and he was like, $100. And we're like, what? Like, give me $100. I'll go let you across the border. And we're like, okay. And so like, he just goes and like opens the border and like lets us go across, and the taxi guy like drives us to the bay. And then because of where your parents lived, basically you either had to bus all the way around, or the best option was you actually get on a boat and they ferry you across the bay to the other corner over where they were. And so then we ended up having to get on a boat. We spent like 8 hours or 6 hours or something like that on like a little boat to get across. And, just, it was one of those things where like when that journey came to an end, like you felt like you had been in prison for 10 years, like you were like getting out of, you were just like, oh my God, I'm so glad that is over. looking back on it, it's hilarious. But at the time, we were dirty and stinky and angry, just like, I want this to be done.
Oh my God. So by the time you got there, how much money? So you said a plane ticket would have been 400. So including that $100 y'all had to shell out. So what, 25 bucks each if there's four of y'all to shell out to get across the border with the bus tickets. How much do you think you ended up paying per person?
We paid I remember the transportation cost was just over $60 for the bus, for all the buses.
Okay.
And that stuff was around $60. Then we had to split the guard payment, which was like 25 bucks a piece. And then the ferry across was like $15 or something, it was pretty cheap. So, I mean, it was well under $100 that we spent. Had I had $400 to buy the plane ticket, like, probably would have been a better decision. I mean, for me, it wasn't. I think Buddy too. I think me and Buddy didn't have the money to buy the plane ticket at all. Devin had the money, and then either Evan or Dan or whoever was with it, the other one that was with us, was like, could get the money from his parents if they wanted to. So
yeah, things you do when you're young.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, I would never, like, if you told me now, like, take a bus through Central America now, I'd be like, no thanks, I'll buy a plane ticket, it's okay. But a wonderful, but just like, I mean, so many laughs after the fact, like, I mean, we spent weeks just laughing about all the nonsense that happened to us during that journey, and so that was always like that kind of became like that kind of the motto for the rest of our travels, is just like, you might be hating it in this moment, but like, there'll be a lot of good laughs coming soon. So
yeah, I feel like, God, so much travel. You can say that about so much travel. And one of the things I love about it is that even in the moment, when you're having moments where, like, I'm sure at some point on that trip, you had to pee, couldn't get off the bus, or you got really hungry and you couldn't stop for another couple hours. And then when you did, you're like, okay, I don't even want what they're selling here at this little pooperia. And so, like, I'm sure you had moments of pockets of angriness, right? But then, like you said, you look back at it and, oh my God, for some reason, it's like one of the best memories, right?
Oh yeah. I'll never forget that, like, those moments on that were they'll be with me forever.
Oh, for sure. And I'll tell you what, you had a good group to travel with. Like, you guys, I mean, I've traveled with you a couple times, and man, I can't even go into some of the stuff. I mean, just some of the stuff we did. And, I felt like, I mean, we would need a whole nother podcast just to, you know what? I think one of these days, because I mean, I can do whatever I want because this is my podcast. I think one of these days I'm going to have me, you, Ryan, Rachel Chand, and Fred Latcher. I think we all need to get on a podcast and do just one on Finca Tatin.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because what a great experience that was, man. Oh man.
Oh man.
That's another place I'll never forget. I'll never forget that place either. What a wonderful experience that place was.
Do you remember the carrot soup?
Oh yeah. And the moth that crashed in. The little girl just like grabs the moth out and is like, "It's okay, don't worry about it."
Oh my God. Yeah, the bugs there. They were like Jurassic Park sizes. Yeah. And then I remember that was the first time we had ever heard Gypsy Kings.
Oh yeah.
And we were like, who is this band?
It's funny now because still, like, most people don't know who Gypsy Kings are, but I hear them constantly. They are, like, I think anytime somebody plays Spanish music in a movie or something, it's Gypsy Kings. So, because my wife writes movies and TV shows here, so we watch tons of movies and TV shows, and every time like one of their songs comes on, I'm like singing it. I'm like, and she's like, "How do you know this music?" And I'm like, "It's Gypsy King. Maybe everybody, Gypsy King."
Oh man, oh that's awesome. Does she like to do extreme traveling like that, or is she more like hopping on the airplane, staying in nicer places, or do y'all just kind of find a balance of Airbnbs?
Yeah, both. She loves to travel. So like, even before I met her, like, she had traveled abroad multiple times. And as we've getting a little bit older, as anybody, as you get a little older and you have a little bit more, financial freedom, one of the things that you will you start to do is you start traveling a little nicer, a little more comfortably, and so we're both that way now. Like I still like a good gritty travel experience every now and again. I don't want to do it for a month anymore. I don't want to be like fighting my way through the stuff for a month, to save $5 or something anymore now. But she's kind of the same way. She will go along with it as long as it's within reason, and then if when you're traveling, sometimes things get out of your control anyway, and things aren't what you expect. And so she's pretty good at handling that as long as it doesn't last for weeks or months.
Mm-hmm. Do y'all have any travel plans planned for this year, 2023?
I hope so. So we're talking now because it's just been like we traveled to the States for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it just so happened to work out that it was the coldest that the Southeast has been in almost like 40 years or something. So it's like we are seeking somewhere warm. So we're talking about it now. From here flying to Thailand's about, it's like a 2.5 hour flight. It costs maybe like $150-$200 or something. So I think a Thai beach is going to be in our future, probably in the next couple of months.
Oh, that sounds great. Are you still a diver?
Yeah. I still dive. I haven't been diving near as much the last couple of years. Diving in Taiwan is just okay. It's sadly Taiwan used to have a really nice like reef system, and most of it that's reasonably accessible it's been overfished. There was no real effort to protect it. So basically, if you want to do any kind of like nice diving where there's a lot of fish and coral and stuff like that, you got to go to some of the kind of islands, which are a little more time consuming and stuff to get to, and a little bit much more expensive. So I haven't been doing as much, but there's been a lot of talk with some friends here recently about trying to get together to do another dive trip. Since living in Taiwan, I've done a bunch of diving though. I've dove all through Thailand, I actually went out to West Papua and like dove with some whale sharks and stuff there. Did a liveaboard in Komodo with some friends, and spent like, a week on a boat in Komodo. Did a couple years ago right before I went home, I finally convinced my dad like to come meet me. I was trying to get him to come and meet me somewhere, and like he was kind of dragging his feet about it. So eventually I was like, all right, like let's go to Egypt, Dad. Let's go see the pyramids. And he was like, okay,
Oh, man.
okay, I'll come do that. That's worth the travel for me. So I convinced him to come out. And so when he left, I was going to meet some people in Switzerland. So I was like, well, I got a week to do something. So I was like, why don't we, I looked around, found a good price on a liveaboard in the Red Sea, and did some diving there. So, I've been,
How's the visibility in the Red Sea?
amazing. It was generally amazing. The best dive that I did there, though, it was kind of an odd spot. The guy was like, yeah, like the currents here are really strong. The visibility is going to be crap. He was like, but if we're lucky, there's a pod of dolphins that frequent this area. And he was like, he's like, when we get in the water, he's like, you guys make as much noise as you can. And he was like, usually you can attract their attention by making a bunch of noise and they'll come over. And so, we were underwater for about 30 minutes, with nothing. You could barely see. We're all flapping our arms and, trying to banging on our stuff, trying to make noise. And then we had about probably 10 minutes left. And all of a sudden you started hearing them, the dolphins. Then they kind of came, and it was such a cool experience. Whenever you're in the ocean with a creature like that, that's so smart, it's really, there's an interaction that takes place that's somewhat akin to a conversation, even though you're not speaking. It's like you look at this, because dolphins typically swim horizontally, for the most part, whereas humans, when you're in the water, for the most part, when you're diving, you should be horizontal, but when you're sitting around just in the middle of nowhere doing nothing, you tend to revert to being vertical. And so as the dolphins would come in, they would turn up vertical and they would move like you, almost like they were making fun of you. Like, look at you. Like, what are you doing down here?
No way.
Yeah. So that was actually that was one of the, next to the whale sharks, that's probably one of the coolest dives I've ever done. I think was in the Red Sea.
That's incredible. So the satire of dolphins, they were making fun of you. That's pretty amazing. How many dolphins do you think there were surrounding you?
Probably, it's hard to tell because, we had about probably 10 foot of visibility there. And there was no way to really determine, but according to the guys on the boat, they said their range from the dolphins that are around there, there's usually anywhere from like 6 to 12 of them that are in that area.
Okay. Yeah, that's incredible. So you've got to do some diving. What'd you do in Switzerland?
Hiking. We did a 14-day, it's called the Out Route, and so it's essentially like a 14-day hike from Chamonix, France. So the first day is in France, and then you hike all the way to the Matterhorn in Zermatt.
While you're hiking and doing and experiencing those adventures, are you thinking, or at that point, were you thinking in your head about starting your outdoor business?
So, well, I hadn't started really putting it together there yet. Like by that point, I had already known, like, yeah, working for myself is something that I want to do. And then I didn't really know where to go or what to do about it. And so that hike actually in Switzerland was really the first hike that I'd ever done that was more than 3 or 4 days long. And so that was kind of my introduction into like longer distance hiking. And I just had such an awesome experience there doing that, because I don't know if you remember, but when we used to go back to like Central America, we would like hike the volcanoes and that kind of stuff. I hated the hiking. Like the hiking was the worst part. Like I'd suffered that part so that I could get to the top and like see the view and take pictures, because I wanted to take the pictures. The hiking part I hated. It wasn't fun. And so it wasn't until kind of around then that I really started to find like kind of joy in hiking, and I think part of that came from growing up a little bit and just dealing with the stresses of life and work all the time, to when you could go out and when you hike, there's this wonderful freedom that comes there because you don't have to think about or work. You literally, what am I going to do? I'm going to wake up and I'm going to walk from this point to that point, and then I'm going to sleep, and then I'm going to do it again. Then I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it again. And so there's just like freedom there. And so that was kind of the first time I really experienced that. And so when I was back in the States traveling around building my camper van, a buddy of mine from Taiwan, he's from Florida, and he was like, one of his lifelong dreams was to go hike the Appalachian Trail. And so he messaged me and was like, "Hey, you want to come like hike some of that trail with me?" And I was like, yeah, okay, why not? I'm not, I can put a pause on the camper for a little bit. So then I actually hiked with him for 30 days. I did basically a whole month on the AT. And that was really when it set in, then it was like, all right, like this is something I want to do. Like this is the experiences that I had on the trail there were so wonderful that, yeah, this is definitely something I want to be a part of.
Okay, so 2 questions. Did you start at Springer Mountain in Georgia, or did you start somewhere else?
Yeah, I started at Springer Mountain, and I hiked all the way through the Smokies. So I started from Springer Mountain and went all the way up through the Smokies, which took about 29 days, something like that, I think.
That's amazing. And then my second question is, did you get a trail name? Did you receive a trail name during that time?
I did, yeah. So my trail name was Grizzly because so I had bought a sleeping bag here in Taiwan, and it was like an Asian fit sleeping bag. So I could barely fit into it. And so when we started, because my friend wanted to start early, so we started at like the end of February, and it was frigid cold. So like the first like 3 nights it snowed on us while we were out there, and I was freezing to death. Like I had all my clothes on. I had Nalgene bottles of boiling water in my sleeping bag, and I was freezing. And so after we were like almost to North Carolina, or almost to the Tennessee border, because basically like when you start, you hike like 5 days, and then you kind of get up to like Hiawassee area, getting close to Tennessee. And so I have a cousin who lives just across the border in Tennessee, and so like I got in touch with her and was like, "Listen, I need somebody to pick me up off the trail and take me into it somewhere because I got to get a new sleeping bag. I'm freezing to death. And so I hopped off the trail for 2 days and went with her to go to get a sleeping bag. And then got a sleeping bag and came back on. But when she picked me up, the first thing she said to me was, "Good Lord, Grizzly Adams, like how long you been in the woods?" Because I had my hair was long. I had this huge beard, at the time, and so that was where my trail name came.
Oh, I love it. Grizzly. Oh, that's awesome. So all of that sounds amazing. So let's circle back around to Taipei, Taiwan. You're there right now. And so if there are people who were like, hey, Taipei, that's been on my list. That's somewhere I would like to come, somewhere I would like to visit. Do you have just like a couple things, a little taste for our listeners? Just like, hey, if you come to Taipei, you don't want to miss this.
Well, I would say, truthfully, if you're coming to Taiwan, don't spend all your time in Taipei. That's a pretty easy thing to do because, I mean, there's more, Taiwan's not like a huge travel destination. So most people come here on like a stopover, like, hey, like I'll stay in Taiwan for a week on my way to Japan or wherever else that they're going, but I would still say, the transportation in Taiwan is amazing. So get out of Taipei at least for a day. You can go down the East Coast to Ilan or Hualien and do some beach time, or go down to the West Coast, go down to like Tainan or something where you can get a little more taste of the traditional culture of Taiwan. Taipei is like a huge international city, so you've got a little bit of everything going on here. But so definitely try to find the chance to get out of Taiwan. And if you can, then, obviously I'm a mountain lover, so I would tell you, find a way to get to the mountains because they're breathtaking. You can go, there's an area in central Taiwan called Hehuan, which you can take a bus up to. And, you're essentially at about 14,000 feet in the air where the road goes up. And you just, as far as you can see in every direction, it's just mountains, and you can kind of get a feel for how much of Taiwan is mountains. So definitely do that. If anybody's coming to Taipei, like I'm sure they've looked up like the food and stuff, so everybody will know about like beef noodles and the different dumplings and the soup dumplings and the bubble milk tea. There's like some really famous things. Definitely try those. A couple other ones to look for is a thing called lu wei, and they're normally like in a stand with a bunch of like meat and vegetables, and there's like a little red basket, and you basically just pick all the stuff you want and you give it to them, and they like cook it in this big vat of soup that they have cooking all the time. That's probably one of my favorite meals in Taiwan. And then also there's like they have these little shrimp wontons and spicy red oil sauce that are super delicious. Like I love those things. So they're not super famous, but they're wonderfully good.
Would you recommend the night market to them?
If you're traveling to Taiwan, you should go to a night market because it's a mind-blowing experience, because you'll literally going down a road that's 10 foot wide and there'll be 20,000 people on it. It's just like literally like shoulder to shoulder, trying to get through there. And it's a wild experience, and you can try lots of food and stuff like that. After living here for a few years, I don't go to those night markets anymore. I go to the smaller ones where it's a lot calmer, because I don't like to deal with those crowds of people. But as a tourist here, it's fun to go see because there's all kinds of stuff going on there in the night markets.
Right.
If you're winter or summer, if you're in the winter, definitely check out the hot springs. There's a lot of natural hot springs and stuff here that you can go and see, which are wonderful in the winter. If you're in the summer, find a river, because the summer is brutally hot, but the rivers here are pretty nice, and a lot of them are pretty easy to get to. You can go spend the day laying in the river and enjoy that. And then the last thing I would say is take advantage of the parks. Taipei in general, and in Taiwan in general, there's tons of parks. They're everywhere. And because of the culture in Taiwan, it's really common for there to be like multi-generational households. So like grandparents, parents, and grandkids all live in the same house, which means there's like zero privacy or space in the house. So everybody goes outside. And so you can just kind of go to the park and just sit in the park and just watch, and you'll see like everybody basically living their life outside in these parks and stuff. It's pretty cool.
I love that though, the closeness of the family where, again, this is not a knocking America podcast, but we have these huge houses and we'll build like this whole other in-law suite so you can be taking care of your parents but still kind of have them as far away as possible. I do think it's, that's just our culture. Again, not knocking it. It seems to be a big part of our culture. How about that? And I do love seeing, and throughout Asia and a lot of Latin America as well, South America, how they just really do live in these close quarters. Like they are close knit with their families. Like they don't need a lot of space, and I definitely,
some of it's cultural, some of it's part of their culture, right? To honor and take care of their, their elders. And then some of it's just a necessity, like especially in Taipei, it's so expensive to buy a place or something like that in Taipei that, like, generally most people can't afford it. So, you don't really have a choice. You can't move out of mom and dad's house, because to buy a 500 square foot apartment in or around Taipei is going to cost you, almost $1 million US. So it's just not an option.
Oh my God. $1 million US?
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to be in the
Wow.
city, if you want to live in the city, like what would constitute as at one of our, like a living room, would be, something the size of a general American living room in Taipei proper would cost you almost $1 million. Or your other option is you buy one that's 50 years old that was built when people originally first came over, and they're the buildings that you see that always collapse and stuff when there's earthquakes, and there's all kinds of problems and stuff with mold and things like that, because they're just really, really old and not properly built buildings. So most people don't want to buy those.
Right. Oh, definitely not. So, well, this has been amazing. And again, because I know you, I can get more personal with my exit here. But I'm so excited for you. I when you were younger, you never know what somebody's going to do with their life. And you have literally traveled all over the world. I mean, you're married to a beautiful Taiwanese woman. You started your own company. Like, I feel like life is good for you, right?
It is. I think, in general, I've been quite lucky. I think Taiwan has treated me very well. That's one of the reasons why I've stuck around here so long, is that things have generally been in my favor in my time here, and I feel like, maybe I was younger then, so, who knows, but I felt like a lot of my life in the States as an adult was a struggle, especially with trying to find free time, trying to have enough money to pay my bills, and all that stuff consumed me there. And after moving abroad, I feel like that's not the case any longer. And so when I come back, when I come back to visit the States, it's pretty wild just to see how expensive everything is getting, and I'm thankful to be here.
Good. I'm happy for you. You look happy. I'm proud of you. So yes, this was amazing. You're amazing. But before I let you go, I love doing like a quick little rapid fire questioning at the end of all these, just because I think it lightens it up, and I just think it's funny, because sometimes you really can just feel connected to a person just off humor and something we can all connect to. And it's just like, so these are all travel related. So here we go. Here's my rapid fire. Number 1, would you rather wake up in a hostel in Guatemala with a trail of ants running across your chest, or plunge into a painful sticker bush as you almost fall off the mountain?
Oof. I'm gonna go with the ants on the chest. From experience has taught me that the ants don't really bother you. As long as you don't mess with them, they'll just march on across and go about their business. Those sticker bushes hurt for days.
And the reason I said that is because I was just thinking, whenever I was preparing some questions for you, I just laughed out loud thinking about you barreling past me because you don't want to knock me off the mountain, and you like just flew off the mountain, and I just stopped and I was like, did did Adam just die? Like, is he okay? And you have been caught by the sticker bushes. I was like, oh my God.
Sadly, that's not
an
an isolated incident. I've fallen off a couple of that mountain.
Oh my God. Okay, so number 2. Would you rather get altitude sickness while doing the Annapurna trek in Nepal, or have painful diarrhea on a camel trek in Morocco?
Oof. Man, I'm gonna go with the altitude sickness. I think so, because generally speaking, those situations are like they're somewhat controlled. You can you can just stay in one of those in the little mountain houses and stuff until you get yourself under. And let me say too, I'm not talking about like life-threatening altitude sickness. Obviously, if it was like life-threatening, yeah, get out. I'm not doing that. But
right.
My experience on a camel in Morocco was already horrible. It was like the most uncomfortable experience ever. And yeah, I mean, if you had diarrhea during that out in the desert where there's nowhere to, oh man, that would be a nightmare.
I just remember being on those camels in the Sahara thinking, how do people cross whole deserts on these things? I mean, they're so uncomfortable. I don't know if I was doing it wrong, but it was painful.
Yeah, and I expected there to be a little bit of uncomfort, because my family has a farm, so like I rode horses and stuff when I was a kid, so I know like when you're riding an animal, it's not particularly comfortable. But I was not prepared for it. It was miserable. Like I would have rather walked. I would have rather, like, I asked the guy, like, can I just get off the camel and walk? And the guy was like, no, because you'll be too slow. He's like, the sand is like knee deep. So he's like, you'll be too slow and we don't want to wait on you. So like, no.
I love it. He's like, no, not at all. You're on this camel's tour. You're sticking to it. Just to let you know, mine would rather be diarrhea on a camel, because last time I got altitude sickness, I was crying and throwing up in a friend's dry sack. And he said that I got so delusional that I started asking for a donkey. That I was like, just give me a donkey. I just want to get on a donkey and get out of here. So apparently that did not work well.
Yeah, we experienced when we did Gokyo in Nepal, the very last day up to we were like right around 5,000 meters, and we got stuck in a storm. And the same thing, like Julia got really bad altitude sickness, and I had it a little bit, and I was uncomfortable, but she was like incapacitated. Like I was kind of worried about her a little bit, about whether or not like we're gonna have to get somebody like come like a helicopter or something to come and get her.
Yeah.
But she ended up, we took some medicine, and she took care of it. But side note, if you've never had altitude sickness and you take altitude medicine, it does really weird stuff to you. Like it made this half of my face was numb, and my entire right arm was numb. I couldn't feel them at all. And and I think Julia, her nose, she couldn't feel her nose. Like it makes parts of your body just go numb. So if that happens, don't panic. It's part of the drugs.
It's part of the healing your altitude sickness problem. Yeah. Even though the only thing that worked for me was just hiking down. Yeah. I just had to go down.
Yeah, if it gets bad enough, yeah, that's the only thing you can do. Yeah, you're not getting enough oxygen in your blood. You got to go down.
Oh yeah. Okay, so number 3. There's 5 of these. Number 3. You're in India. Would you rather fight a monkey or a man?
Absolutely a man, no question. Monkeys are evil. So as a kid, I loved monkeys. I thought monkeys were like the coolest thing. And then I started traveling and I met monkeys, and they are all, without exception, assholes. All of them. And I would not want to fight. And also, monkeys won't fight fair. If you've ever seen like monkeys get on something, when one starts, they all start. It's like a hive mind. So you'd be battling the whole troop, like no doubt. So I would definitely fight the man.
Oh my God! Did you ever see Ryan's pictures of his shirt ripped to shreds from whenever he was fighting a monkey, and the only reason he ended up winning is because he punched it in the throat and it just had enough time to get away?
No, I didn't. But I've seen it, man. I've seen it time and time again. I've seen people messing with monkeys, and I'll call it out. Like, don't do that. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. And the whole going and feeding monkeys and stuff, because they get pissed when you don't have any more food. They don't believe you. It's like, no, you still got food. I'm like, no, I don't have any. And they start biting you and hitting you. And
oh yeah, they can smell it. Yeah, monkeys don't play around. They will F you up, man.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that. All right, so number 4, while you're traveling, book or Kindle?
It's nowadays it's Kindle for sure. But there's still, I will say, I still love the feel of an actual book in my hand. And there's something nostalgic about that when you're traveling. Like, when you pop in a hostel and you grab a book off their shelf and you just start reading it or something, but the convenience eventually wins out, because if you're going to go travel for a month, I can take 10,000 books with me on my Kindle, and I don't got to worry about it getting wet or anything like that, whereas I can remember traveling with with my travel guide book, that weighed 2 pounds and two other books
at
with
least
me,
2 pounds.
2 other books with me, you're carrying 10 pounds of book, with you. And so I'm glad those days are gone and I can just carry my Kindle.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's true. All right. So 5th one. So from a safe distance, just for having the sheer moment of feeling like you're in nature and you're experiencing something that's a little different, would you rather see a polar bear in the wild, or would you rather be on a kayak and see a killer whale in the wild?
I would say I would prefer the killer whale in that instance, because I feel like I've had my experience with large marine life is, again, like I talked about earlier with the dolphins and with the whale sharks, is that there is a sense of communication that is going on there. Those creatures are so intelligent, and so you can feel that. Like when you have an interaction with one of those, you get that feeling that this other animal is also engaging with me in some kind of communication here. Other large mammals I've seen bears and stuff before, and while it's really awesome, and to me a bear is kind of like my spirit animal, I think, so I really love them. There's something to be said for that when you actually feel like the other creature is also taking something from the interaction. So I think it would be cooler to see the killer whale.
Okay. No, I love that answer. I think for me, God, it's so hard because when I was a kid, I was one of those kids who everything whale, everything dolphin. I'm sure you remember my room at some point. It was just all sea animals. And, when I was a kid, I think my answer would have been killer whale, hands down. But now there's something fascinating to me about the loneliness of a polar bear. Like, I know the cubs stay with the mother and she protects them for a while. And golly, I didn't even realize until a couple years ago that the father polar bear will at some point try to hunt their own cubs, for food, depending on the time of year. But just to see them in such a vast environment and just to know how they survive, I don't know, that for me, that's fascinating to just be able to watch it. I think I could sit there probably all day and just, watch it. I mean, I don't want it coming close to me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think another thing, another point you could make with the polar bear, sadly, is that we might be the last generation that gets the opportunity to actually see them in the wild like that, so that would also be something that would be a pretty powerful, emotional experience as well, to be like, there's not a whole lot of these guys left. And who knows how many more generations of people will have that opportunity.
I know, it's heartbreaking. Ugh. Well, so my last question to you is, if you're leaving the house and you're about to go on a hike in wherever, Taipei, Taiwan, Appalachian Trail, Annapurna, wherever, what are 2 things, and I know there's a lot of things you hike with, but what are 2 things that you're just like, this is my go-to every time I go on a hike?
Let's see. I would say I'm gonna omit the major thing like sleeping bag and that kind of stuff, because like that, you obviously you're gonna die if you don't bring that. So
Right.
I would say two go-to things where there are options is one is like a Nalgene bottle. Like I learned that those things they become they're so useful. Like not only can you obviously drink out of them, you can put boiling water in them to keep yourself warm. It's very common for people to carry on long hikes to carry two of them because at night it's super cold. You don't want to get out of the tent to pee, so you have one of those that you pee in. So you can actually, and it's got a big opening at the top, wide mouth opening, so it makes it easy to do your business like that.
It makes it easy for
True.
men.
Yeah,
It's still going to be
it's still going to be
it's
difficult
still
for
going to be
women.
hard
Good
for
luck.
the
I don't know how you're
ladies.
going to do that one. We definitely have that advantage. And then also for
Right.
filtering water, it's really easy to filter water into those things. So I think for me, I learned on the AT, like definitely don't, there's all kinds of water bottles you can choose from. The Nalgene still reigns king. And
Right.
then I would say the other one would be in Asia. I'm going with my rain jacket, my light rain jacket. That no rain jacket is going to keep you dry until to a certain period of time. But if you can keep yourself comfortable a whole lot longer with a real light rain jacket. Don't get something too heavy or too big because you'll end up just sweating and you'll be wet anyway. So it's a light, thin outer shell, kind of a rain jacket, can be a real lifesaver when you're out in the woods.
That's good advice. This was so much fun. I had so much fun talking to you. I mean, we've known each other for like 25 years, so of course it's going to be comfortable for us to talk. But yeah, talk and travel, especially with people who just have a passion for it and love it and have just kind of devoted their life to it. It's just always the best conversation. This was fun.
Oh yeah, it's always a pleasure, to sit around and reminisce, about I would say, like you said, we could have done probably 2 or 3 hours on a podcast of just talking about some of the wild stories and stuff that we've had.
Oh my God, at least. I mean, it could be a whole podcast of its own. I mean, your crew, my crew, when we all met up together, oh man,
Yeah.
the 20s, those are the best years,
Oh,
right?
they were.
I mean,
Oh
I
yeah.
say they were, but how about this? They were the best for stories. Like I love my life now. I love the comfort of having my daughter, having my boyfriend. I love the comfort of my home. Like it's all great, but it's just, my best stories are definitely from my 20s.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I don't know, like there's a lot of luck involved there too. Like I said, like, I've got a lot of stories that involved tremendous amounts of luck, that I would never want to go back and relive those again because they were dangerous, or stuff like that, where we happened to just get very lucky where nobody got hurt or nothing bad happened or anything like that, so. But yeah, when you're young, that's the mentality, right? It's just, there's no thought about, we deal with problems as they come, now as an adult, maybe it's from experience dealing with those problems. Now you're a little bit better able to foresee the potential problem and ultimately try to find a way around it, which is, I think, ultimately better, but at the same time, maybe diminishing some of the excitement, from traveling. I think I'm really due for an adventure travel. I haven't really had a
Yeah.
good kind of roughing it adventure abroad somewhere in probably 5 or 6 years now, so it's about time for that. I really love Indonesia for that. Like, so in terms of Asia, Indonesia is the Wild West, man. Like there are so many islands and things out there, and you can go to Bali and everything's pretty calm and normal. And then the further you head out east into the islands, it just descends into the Wild West, man. And it's no holds bar, anything goes. There's no guidebook for those places, and it's just you just
No.
go out there and try to figure it out. And that's probably somewhere I need to go in the next couple of years.
Yes, that would be awesome. And after you get back from that trip, we need to get back in touch and I need to hear all about it.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah, and you know what? Sometimes whenever you think about going on trips like that, I don't know why, but sometimes I just wish for like I don't even want to say this and it's going to sound really weird, but sometimes I'm just hoping that it doesn't go perfectly,
Sure. Oh, yeah.
because I want a little bit of action. I want a little bit of excitement to where I'm like, am I going to make it across this border? Is it good? What's going to happen here? Like, I don't know. Sometimes I just don't wish for that perfect trip. I just think it's so much more fun when just life happens and takes place. And like you said, a lot of luck comes into play. But those just, to me, are some of the most special times.
Yeah, because not only are those, exciting in the moment, create good stories to discuss later, but really those are a lot of times when most of the most kind of organic cultural experience comes into place, because usually when you're in a situation like that, you have to seek help to get out of it, right? So you end up interacting with local people or communities or stuff, and they end up helping you, and you end up having good conversation, possibly having dinner and getting invited back and making friends, So those are I would wish for everybody's travels to have some small hiccups along the way. Don't want to wish any major problems on anybody, but keep your fingers crossed that everything doesn't go perfectly, because you'll be better for it after.
Yeah, 100%. That's you should write a book just on that.
One page book. There it is.
I love that. Okay, so here's your moment to plug. I want you to tell our listeners, plug your business that you started, that you have created. And I know you said you're working on this year to get it put out to where other people besides the citizens of Taiwan to get it. But I know you're going to get to that point where you're shipping all over the world. And so, yeah, do your little plug. Tell us where we can eventually get your stuff and look at your stuff.
All right. So the company's name, English name, is Hikeright. And basically what we do is we're trying to create like high quality, comfortable, functional outdoor products that are basically under two categories. One, sustainable, and also what we deem to be reasonably affordable. Right. And so the joke was always, we don't want them to break your back or your bank. So that's kind of the joke good. That I always say about it. Right now we have merino wool underwear for men and women. We have shorts for men and women. We have leggings for we have like a unisex leggings for men and women. We just launched. We did a successful crowdfunding for a sleeping bag, so we have a sleeping bag available now. And then this year we're about to release a pair of hiking pants. And then hopefully in the upcoming winter, we're going to have like a full base layer and a few other different types of apparel. And then hopefully going to do this year a 20-liter like kind of packable day pack that I'm kind of working on right now. So it's hanging up behind me on the wall there. It's my first prototype back there.
Yes.
So the website is www.hikeright.tw. At the moment, we're not shipping to the U.S. Obviously, in bulk, right? So if somebody reaches out to me, contacts through our email or something, says, "Hey, like I live in the States, I would really love to try this product," then sure, like we will like send it out, and we can work something out to get those products to you in the States. But they're not readily available for purchase in the States at the moment. But hopefully within the next year, they will be to some degree or some level be available there.
Oh man, you're killing it. You're just killing it in life right now. That's so exciting. Well, thank you so much. This has been an amazing hour and I've had a blast. And again, just throwing this out there, we're going to have to get the whole group of us back on here just to really throw out some of those stories,
That sounds great.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye. Take care. See you next time.
Bye.
We remind you that this is a non-smoking flight. Smoking is prohibited on the entire aircraft, including the lavatories. Tampering with, disabling, or destroying the lavatory smoke detectors is prohibited by law. If you have any questions about our flight today, please don't hesitate to ask one of our flight attendants.